Should you be using AI? Should you not? Is AI a dirty word in your vocabulary, or are you jumping right in and using all of it? Maybe you have a little bit of resistance. AI is the big topic of conversation right now. And as a new manager, you are probably trying to navigate, do I use AI? Is my team using AI? How do I support them? How can I use this to my advantage? It's a lot to think about, which is why I brought Annie Johnson onto the podcast to get her insights and get her views. I love Annie's work. She is the co-founder and creator of MAC, the Humaneer app, a AI technology for HR professionals. But she is in the AI space around how you can use it to maximize and get the best out of it while being cautiously curious is the wording that she used. So I'm going to introduce Annie, and then we're going to jump straight into this episode because it's going to be a goodie. Annie is the co-founder and chief product officer of Humaneer. She is leading the charge in redefining AI's role in HR. She understands the paradox of applying artificial intelligence to the most human-centric function in business and sees it not as a zero-sum game, but as an opportunity to elevate HR's strategic impact. Humaneer is pioneering machine-accelerated knowledge, collectively known as MAC, an AI-powered productivity partner that streamlines admin without stripping away the human elements that make HR essential, assuring AI is not a replacement for HR professionals, but a catalyst for deeper human connection, strategic influence, and business success. This is such a good conversation, so jump on it. Hello, Annie. I'm so excited to have this conversation. We've been meaning to do this for a while, and I finally snagged you up, so I'm excited to have you on Lead with Less.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
It's going to be a goodie, especially around this topic of AI. And there's this interesting place that we're in with it. People are super excited and they are optimistic about what it can do. Then we've got people who are just absolutely resistant, kind of pessimistic, doomsday with it. And then we've got a lot of the people that are kind of in the middle with like, yeah, I dabble with a little bit of ChatGPT. Don't really know what it could really do for me. But before we jump into some of that juicy conversation, I'd love to just understand what got you here, what got you into the artificial intelligence world that you're now building AI products through Humaneer. If you could just give us a bit of interesting background.
Yeah, it's an interesting story really, because my background is HR. So I've spent 20 odd years in HR, popped out and did some more commercial roles. And then when I was running my consultancy, Tash, I was on my own. I had already suffered burnout within my HR roles. My consultancy was growing, and when AI burst onto the scenes, I really saw it as an opportunity to use technology in a way that I could move work forward much faster or produce work much faster for my clients. And look, my background in HR, I've never been the tech savvy one, which is the interesting maybe oxymoron to me, is that I always joke that I was that person who used to walk my keyboard over to IT and say that it wasn't working. AI is just that technology that I get, and I get really excited about its capability and what it can do for us. So started diving into it in my consultancy and using it myself with HR and strategy and leadership, and then started building. And so looked at the opportunity to start creating a platform where people can use AI safely and use it. Our product is an HR native product, so it's built for HR professionals, which kind of cuts out some of the noise and confusion around using some of the general models out there. But it's been a really big learning curve for me. Really, really loved it. When you're learning about AI, one day in AI is probably like a couple of months of development with how fast it's iterating. So yeah, co-founder of Humaneer now, and really loving what we're able to deliver with what we're doing with Mac.
Yeah, I love that. And I find it so fascinating how there's lots of podcasts popping up, like Diary of a CEO has been talking about AI for quite a while, like on quite a few episodes. And there's people who've been talking about AI for like 10 or 15 years, whereas really people only think about AI since OpenAI and ChatGPT. But it's been around for a really long time, and it's actually being used in a lot of different ways that we don't think about in that way. Would you say that our perception of AI is being mostly morphed about what we've seen in the last few years than what it really is in a broader perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the generative AI, which is, your ChatGPTs that burst onto the scenes in 2022, for all of us, it's a new type of AI. So it does feel relatively new, and it's the type of AI that is iterating so fast at the moment. You know,
Because it's
our
learning from itself, right? That's what they
yeah,
mean by generative. It's like learning from itself as
it's
well.
it's trained on the World Wide Web, or largely, you know, that's what ChatGPT and the Claudes have been trained on. But what we're seeing now is such a fast iteration of all the models and the capability. And so you see all these big players doing this sort of constant leapfrogs. The generative AI aspect comes in the way that the technology performs, which essentially it's just putting words together based on probability. That's the simplest way to explain it. And I often find that that's all people really want to know. But there are, you know, there's now agentic AI that's jumped onto the scenes. That's the new kid on the block, as we like to say. And that's another area that people are looking to understand. But it has been around for a while. And there's lots of really big technical terms that are thrown out there that people sort of go, you know, what is machine learning? What is deep learning? And it's all sort of related. They're all subsets of each other. And then artificial intelligence is this broad term that we talk about. But it's been recommending your Netflix Next Watch series.
The algorithm, right? That's an AI
Totally.
in ways, yeah.
That's right. It learns from your behavior. And so it's why you get those shopping cart recommendations. It's behind Siri and Alexa. We've got lots of systematic AI that we've been working with, lots of chatbots we've been working with for a number of years. Why this feels so new is its capability and how fast it is developing and how fast it's catching up to actual human level performance, which is quite mind blowing when you think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, anything that happens very quickly scares humans just because our brain actually isn't capable of adapting that quickly. I mean, our brains aren't even adapted to the world that we live in now. And
It's still in
and
hunter-gatherer mode, right?
exactly. And so now it's just more and more, you know, because again, we're programmed for fear. We're programmed like, oh my gosh, is this going to impact our survival? What is this going to mean? Then that adds that another layer of, should I be scared of this or should I be excited about this? And generally those feelings can often be quite the same in the body. But again, it's what's the story, what's the conditioning, what's the narrative that we're listening to around it.
Yeah.
And I guess that comes to my first real question here. It's we're seeing a lot of people who are really adopting it, really leaning into it. Like, as you said, when you saw it come out, you really thought about this as an opportunity. How can I push work forward? How can I make work easier for myself? How can I deliver work easier? What is it about the people who see it as an opportunity? And what is it that they're focusing on versus the people who are more resistant, more in that fear of, I don't know what this could do. This could potentially be quite bad. Or maybe even just those who are a bit ambivalent and apathetic around it, where it's like, oh, it's neither here or there. I can't really be bothered. I'll kind of use it a little bit for meal planning, but I'm not going to see what else it could do. What is the differentiator between the adopters and the resistors?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I love how you group it into three categories because that's how I've sort of always viewed change. You know, you've got those people who lean in really quickly, they get excited. You know, it doesn't take much to get them on board and off they go. Those people are really curious. They're the people that are experimenting on a daily basis. They've probably wrapped their heads around it a lot faster and they're seeing those opportunities and even those productivity gains now. You in the middle, you do have a group of people who might be just sort of tinkering around the edges, or they're sort of almost sitting on the fence of whether I'm up for this. And really that which way they fall will come down to their trust in the future and how they're asked to use it, you know, how we support them through the change, how they actually see the benefit of it. And then you do have this group who are really, really fearful. And I have lots of conversations with people about that fear. It's a very real human response, like you've said. And people fear for their work, they fear for their roles, they fear for humanity and the planet. And those people need some nurturing. You can't just go force them into AI because it's a lot to firstly understand, but also when you're fearing your job might be taken or you're reading all of the scaremongering in the media, they need different messaging and they need a different why as to why they might just even start giving it a go. And to be honest, you know, we've got the younger generation coming through who lean into it a lot faster. But even in that generation, there are a bunch of grads, younger people who are just really anti-AI. And I've had people talk to me about the fact that they've said, Annie, I've got a graduate who just won't use it. They just don't want to touch it. They're quite happy playing in their spreadsheets and can't do anything about that.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I had a conversation with a graduate recently at another event, and he was even saying, what Annie should I be thinking about as I go through university? Should I be using it? Should I not be using it? They are starting to ask the questions. Some of them are sitting there going, I actually want to learn how to use my brain rather than getting it to write my essay for me. So it's not exclusive around generations. It comes down to sometimes your personal trust with it and really what you want to use it for and how you want to realize any gains.
I think we like to put people in categories, right? Like put them in boxes. Like Gen Z are all about AI, and they all it's like millennials are like nervous but excited, and then Gen X are like no. But it's so true that it's so individualistic. And from a manager's perspective, we're going to tie this back into being a manager and being a leader. But this really comes down to your leadership skills as well, because being a great leader is about being able to adapt individually for your team. What's important for each of your team members? How do they prefer to be led? How do they invest? What do they believe? How do they interact? And this really does fall into that conversation. Okay, let's kind of steer this into two parts. We'll do the excitement, the optimistic first. I don't know, maybe we should have done that one first. I don't know. But let's do that one first. Be the benefits for managers to lean into AI, or to at least explore its potential and what it could do. How would it actually make life and work easier for them? What would be the benefits?
So there's lots of schools of thought around productivity. We hear it all the time that AI is going to make us more productive. And that is one benefit. You can definitely do some of your more repetitive admin tasks much, much faster than you typing on a keyboard or writing up notes, for example. Those productivity gains are a really great use case and a very quick win for the use of AI, and where leaders could potentially really support their team in the use, as long as you've got all of the guardrails in place and you're controlling the controllables and doing the right thing with clean data. The other side, not just with productivity though, is this piece around getting time back for us as humans. Maybe it's not just about productivity. What else could we be doing with that time? We've become really burnt out post-COVID. Maybe we need to scale back. Maybe we could get rid of this 40-hour week that's become kind of the stock standard. So there's sort of two parts to those wins. Where I see going beyond that for leaders is starting to use AI to ask better questions. So not just creating content, not just writing emails, but actually using it as a thought partner. And that's where AI can be incredibly powerful for a leader, because we all bring our own bias to our roles. You're busy in your jobs and your day-to-day tasks. Using AI to surface things that you might not otherwise consider is a really powerful use case. I think for the other side of it around employees as well is just that support to help them be cautiously curious. It's about supporting your team and having those conversations, making sure the guardrails are in place. We've got clear policy and guardrails, and we know what we can and can't do with AI. And then we don't put the full stop there. We continually educate and coach our teams around how to use it, when to use it, why to use it. You can cut out ChatGPT from your teams. You can force them just to use Copilot. But the problem with that is that it's in the hands of every employee now. And so you have to train for that scenario, not the fact that you've just shut down ChatGPT. And that's quite a big thing for leaders to think about, is that they're training for that scary use, for the use that might not be right. And so there's sort of two parts around great benefits. You can get a lot from the use of AI, but also you're shepherding your employees through this as well. You're supporting them to use it wisely and safely and ethically. So it's a big role for leaders to be doing that. And it's sometimes just sort of handed to them because the board will say, we need to do AI. Let's go. So that places a lot of pressure on us as leaders to sit there and go, well, how do I do this myself? How do I navigate it myself? But also, how do I navigate it with my team? And we do it together and do it as a cautiously curious team.
It's so common just to we just need to manage it, figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, what do we mean by manage it? What do we actually want the outcome to be? Yeah. And I really agree with what you said around, we'll just shut ChatGPT down, that they can't access it, or they can only use Gemini or whatever the preferred word. But it comes back to like what you said around we need to actually teach people the fundamental ethics and skills, because the ethics, the mindset, the skills is what's transferable across system.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we can teach people the system, like here's how you use Copilot, here's how you use ChatGPT, here's how you use Gemini or whatever. But ultimately, what is the mindset we want people to have when they're using this? What are the ethics we want people to practice when they're using this? And that's the thing that we need to be thinking about. But managers can't come up with that themselves on their own either. As an organization, what is it that we want this to do? How is it that we want people to behave with it? How is it that we want people to interact with it from a mindset and from an ethics perspective, not just a prompts perspective? Because
yeah,
you know,
I talk about sort of purpose-led design with AI. We can all be using ChatGPT, which is kind of your personal productivity stuff sometimes of rewriting emails, etc. But inevitably, you've got to start to slot into these larger tech stacks. And one of the things that organizations need to be careful of is that any AI use or design, regardless of what tool you use, you have to be mapping that change out against your purpose and your values as an organization. You should be thinking about, what do we want to use it for that aligns with the way we operate? And that includes your employees, but also your customers and your candidates, so that if you have a brand as an organization, yet you're using AI in a way that's incongruent with, that's going to cause a really big psychological shift in your staff and your customers. And so for leaders, I think they need a lot of support to also consider that, because we see people being interviewed by these weird AI chatbots. As a candidate, I've given a lot of time to this. I really care about this interview. If you're going to make me interview with a chatbot, do you care about me? And so you have to think about how that reflects on you as an organization. And it also comes down to that transparency. So if we're going to be using employee data with AI or customer data, leaders should be thinking about, well, are we telling our customers we're using AI? Are we transparent about the decisions it makes? Are we transparent about how their data goes through AI? So it's, when you think about that, it can be really overwhelming for a leader, really overwhelming to think about where do I start? And so I think they're looking to, how do we manage this as a broad organizational team? And some of us in New Zealand are part of SMEs, which we don't have a number of people that are going to help us navigate this. So what are the tools that leaders need to help with these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, this is like such a big conversation. And I think what scares people the most is that it is relatively new in its adoption now, in the way that it's being used now. And that example around people getting interviewed by bots that's wild. Like I saw an article about it where, someone realized halfway through the interview that they were talking to a bot, like they weren't even talking to a real person. And that's wild to me. That's
crazy.
so wild to me. And you can almost see the natural evolution of that when companies started doing interview screening, where, candidates would have to submit videos, and then they would be, you can almost see that it was naturally eventually going to get to this point.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for the managers who are resistant themselves, but they know that their team is using AI, whether that is to rewrite emails, whether that is to start brainstorming a pitch deck that they're meant to be writing and being like, hey, chat, this is what I need to deliver. Can you create this for me? So the manager who is resistant themselves, they're not really interested. They don't want to fall into this narrative of like, oh, if I use AI, then, my job can be replaced, or, I'm not as effective, but their team is using it. What would you say to those managers to help them reshift their thinking and help them support, or at least help them maybe open their mind with where they're at to then be able to support their team?
Yeah, I think the first place to start would be with their own personal resistance, unpacking that with them. Change management wise, we know that people aren't necessarily resistant to change. They're resistant to the threat in front of them. And so we're not going to support leaders to use AI if we're not helping to build that awareness with them around, this is how you could use it, or these are the things that you should be careful of, or what are you afraid of? Hey, let me help you control the controllables. So creating that awareness in itself can help with some of that resistance. There is a lot of scaremongering out there, and it can be really overwhelming for leaders. Even if you looked at LinkedIn, the tech chat is huge, and I avoid it like the plague. Find your people in your village that it makes sense. But breaking down that awareness and helping them to understand, why am I resistant? What is sitting beneath that would be the first step. And then helping them to understand, even in their day-to-day role, if I could give them back 1 hour a week, let's start with that. You could just go take your lunch break, right? Or go home on time. What are the really easy, safe use cases that we could get you using that could get you that hour back? And I think even just that is a great step. And I've seen people really shift from just doing that to then becoming your biggest evangelist in AI. So it's helping them with smaller steps. You can't expect them to go in and start doing big analysis and finding out how to write reports and do deep research. And then, like, for their team, they need to be coaching their team on that innovation. So if people are using it, we've controlled the controllables. So we're not training models. We're using accounts that are locked down and they're private and they're secure. Your team may be able to find some really amazing gains. And that's not about getting rid of people. That could be that it's surfacing insights that you have never seen before. It could be finding new ways of working. It could be 5xing your outputs, right? So for a leader, it's not about, you've got to think about your team using this. And if you disagree with it, that's cool. But you have obligations to your team to support them to learn it and to use it safely. And so understanding how you control those controllables is really important. And then creating little think tanks or little innovation labs where people can share their prompts or share their wins. The reason I say that, Tash, is because every single day your employees will be finding personal efficiency gains. And then just how transparent they are about that with you as a leader actually comes down to how you respond. So if you're not educating them and supporting them and motivating them,
or curious about it, just asking questions.
Yep, they could either be using it in a really unsafe manner, or they could be sitting at their desk following their little cursor around, having saved an hour a day, and they're not able to share that. So that's kind of where those that are resistant, there will be a reason for that. And sometimes it's really valid, but let's go deeper on that, because you've got a team who are looking to you to go, this can be a good thing. Let's be transparent. Let's build trust around it so that we're all doing the right thing.
I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that VIP Leaders, my leadership development program, is currently open for enrollment. VIP Leaders is my signature program that helps you strengthen your leadership identity, build trusted influence, and level up your emotional intelligence to become a leader people actually want to follow. The next round is starting very soon in September 2025. So if you are interested in leveling up your leadership skills, giving you everything that you need to be a leader people actually want to follow, head down into the show notes and click VIP Leaders to find out more. And if you've got questions, reach out and let me know. All right, let's head back to the episode. And sometimes that resistance can often be just that lack of knowing how to do it well. Like, I know that people who listen to this podcast, people who work with me through coaching, often the biggest holdback is, I don't want to be seen like I don't know. I don't want to seem incompetent. So the resistance like that you've shared is so valid around, I'm just not interested, or I don't want to do it wrong. But it's just like, I actually just don't know how to do it well. Yes. And then you've got people who in your team who are possibly adopting it really well, and they're talking about it and they're seeing all these gains, but then there's this gap of, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm not able to be at that level. And this is where that like vulnerability is really key as a leader, to be like, hey, I'm finding myself very resistant to AI. I've been thinking about it, and it's because I don't feel like I know how to use it well. Would you be keen to show me? Or can you show me how you use it? And it's, although leaders and managers need to be there to like safeguard their team and be the direction holder, you're not going to know everything about everything. And with how fast this is moving, you might not be the expert, and that gets to be okay. There might be someone on your team who actually becomes your AI champion or your AI expert in the team, and they're the ones that are more taking the lead around helping other people use it. Like, as you say, sharing those efficiency gains, like, hey, I actually used it in this way this week, which I think would be really beneficial for everyone. And the leader can then go, okay, this is really interesting. And they might be able to play that devil's advocate around and be like, this is really good. Maybe here's something that we need to think about, or maybe this is something that we need to talk about. So again, just leaning into like digging into what is the resistance. But if that resistance is, I feel like I'm behind, that's okay. Like, I don't feel like I'm ahead in the AI game. Like, I use ChatGPT almost every day. And I agreed with your point around being a great soundboard, because I will create something, a leadership workshop, and I'll put it into chat and be like, this is what I've created so far. Speaking as like a leadership expert, have I missed anything? Or are there any gaps in my presentation that would be useful for me to talk about? And then it'll be like this, and this. I'm like, okay, that's a good point, but that's actually not what I'm covering because it's not valid for this particular thing. But it got me thinking. I'm like, oh, actually, that is a good point. And because again, we don't know everything, but we've got this tool that's like scouring the web for like literally everything. And it can just be that extra brain. But anyway, I'm going to go on lots of tangents.
It releases you, right? Like, you see things come out that you go, I just would have never have thought about that. And then you think about all of those little opportunities that make you better. Like, there's a very deep psychological piece to this that you're just talking about there around feeling vulnerable that you don't know. And part of that is around the fast iteration of this. Even I struggle to keep up with the development, Tash, and I'm building with AI every single day. And so people get this FOMO. They go, am I being left behind? I'm still back on this model. Why should I be thinking about deep research? And it's overwhelming, and it's a massive mental load to carry. And the other part of it, a lot of people still are in this mindset that if I'm seen to be using AI, am I lazy? People going to think that I'm just cutting corners. But the thing is, AI is not going to go away, right? And so the more you can bring this to the surface in your team, the less you can break down that theory of it's making you lazy. The more you can bring it into your team meetings or talk about those prompts, you will learn from one another. As a leader, we always say you don't have to know everything. And in fact, if your team is smarter than you, then that's a good thing. So
it means you built a really good team.
Exactly. So that vulnerability is, you've raised a really good point, because there are a lot of people that sit in that camp of, I'm being left behind, I'm too far behind to catch up. And so then my head goes in the sand. So yeah, that's something definitely to work through.
Yeah, this actually falls into the expert imposter type. And that's definitely one of my Achilles heels, because I still haven't used deep research on chat. I haven't even built a GPT yet, a bot. I haven't even done that yet. But I've had so many ideas. I'm like, oh, I could build like a difficult conversations bot where a manager could put in their context or like their situation. And then, because you build it based on a framework, right, of like set of prompts. And I'm like, I could actually like help them pull through, like, have you thought about this? Get clear on this, and then give them a whole structure of how they would then have that conversation. Like, that would save a manager how many hours to try and think about, how would I have this conversation? Do I have all the points properly? Have I covered all the things? But then so this is actually a good conversation, because then I'm scared to create that, because what if that makes it less human?
Yes.
What if they use that bot and that makes me less human of a manager?
Yeah.
Whereas it's no different to me giving someone a 5-step framework on a Google Doc, which is what I do currently in my program. When we go through the Courageous Conversations module, they have a Google Doc where they literally go through each of the prompts to prepare themselves for it. It wouldn't be any different. ChatGPT is prompting it.
Yep.
And that's an interesting thing for me to work through, where it's like, I want to help make people's lives easier, make their jobs easier. But then I'm still nervous about utilizing the technology and what are people going to perceive about it. And so I can only imagine that managers are experiencing the same thing. But this also reminds me of the podcast episode between Simon Sinek and Stephen Bartlett on Diary of a CEO, when Stephen talks to Simon about AI. And because we know that Simon Sinek is all about being human and being a leader. And one of the main points he made throughout, it's like, AI will never be able to fully replace being human. If technology could truly do that, it would have done that in so many ways. Like when online shopping came out, everyone panicked that malls would go bust and shops would go bust, and that there would never be a physical shop ever again, because why would there be? but it actually made physical shopping more valuable, more important, because at the end of the day, people still want to go and see another person to
We're
have an
requiring,
experience.
yeah,
And so there are so many instances where we panicked that technology was going to completely replace a very human experience. But at the end of the day, a human wants to have a human experience.
yeah.
And, we're seeing it now with like so much technology is actually creating more disconnection
Mm,
because
mm,
we're not having our human experiences.
yeah.
And so coming back to like AI and leadership and this worry that AI is going to replace our jobs, it's what you said earlier around getting rid of the noisy stuff that's like, why am I spending 20 hours of my week doing this crap?
Yes.
That like writing notes and making templates and writing policies, like coming back to my HR background, like writing policies and like contract templates and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
why are we spending so many hours when actually my AI bot could do that? I would still have to check it because we still have to fact check everything. And Mac would be the same, right? We still need to check it. We still need to fact check everything. But it creates this capacity where I can actually have more meaningful conversations because I
Yeah.
have the time to have
Yep.
more meaningful conversations. I have the time to have more one-on-ones with my team. I have the
Yeah.
time to sit there and brainstorm with someone, whereas normally I'd be like, I'm in back-to-back meetings. I can't. I'll give you 5 minutes. That's it.
Absolutely.
We're so terrified about the fact that this is going to take away our jobs, whereas Simon said this really great. This is going to challenge us to be more human. This is going to
Yes,
challenge us to value humanity more,
I
which we
agree.
haven't been doing.
Exactly. And I think we've got to move away from feeling this as like a binary decision. When we think about AI, we think about it's got to take all of my emails, it's got to take all of my admin. I've got to go have only human conversations. And somehow we've just shifted into this binary mindset where you can still do admin if you find solace in that, right? So there's lots of research starting to come out now, and Professor Jared Hart, a good friend of mine, is doing some awesome research.
He was my professor at Waikato.
Amazing. Jared is hilarious, but he's also very clever in what he's doing around AI and productivity. I think some of this resistance comes down to this point where we become binary, that it's going to remove all your admin and all you're going to do is spend time with people.
And then
We
there's
don't.
introverts who are like, absolutely not.
Exactly. I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I need to go fill my cup just with some alone time, right? And so the thing is that if we do too much of this, remove everything, and you go just sit in front of people and chat all day, or do like the big kind of complex cognitive tasks, it's actually going to potentially lead to more burnout. And so we've got to move away from that binary discussion, because even if it removes half, quarter of that administration, that's just that mental load gone for you. You can still do that. I'm not saying take it all away, but just get some balance back. And I think that's where people get worried about what does this mean for me in terms of my role and taking my job? And not everybody wants to go have human conversations. Some people love sitting in spreadsheets and they get protective over that type of work. So that's all part of the change.
And I think this is the curiosity piece. I know you talked about cautiously curious, which I also love, but this is the part about curiosity just fundamentally, instead of making up our minds, because the thing is we can't make up our minds. We can make our mind up right here in this moment, but tomorrow OpenAI is going to do something that's going to completely change everything and you're going to be like, oh, what?
Here we go again.
Yeah. And so we can't make up our mind fundamentally about AI.
Yeah.
And we also can't make up our mind of like, it's the worst thing that's ever going to happen to humanity, because we could say that about a lot of technology that's been released over the years, that it was the worst thing ever to happen to humankind. I think we just need to remain curious, and also a level of optimism that as humans, we are going to figure it out. Yes, we're sometimes very dumb and we maybe do stuff before we've really thought about what it means, but eventually we do figure it out, because that is what it takes for us to survive, and we will figure it out. And I think as leaders, this is also the part that I drill into the ethos of being a leader. It's like, how can we be curious and optimistic? Even if things seem terrible and hard and doomsday and gloom right now, we will always move through it. We think about all of the massive tragedies that's happened over the centuries, over the years. when we're in it, it feels like this is it.
Yeah.
But we've always moved through it. There's always been the next thing or been like the other side.
Yeah.
And that curiosity is so important, because if we don't allow ourselves to be curious, we're just going to stay stuck, and we are going to get left behind, and not in a good way. Not
Yeah.
in the I'm protected, I'm happy over here. It's, oh, I'm the only one that's left here. And we don't want that to be the case. It's like, how can we be curious about it? How can we see the potential while being cautious,
Yeah.
while being resistant, but a healthy resistance, like a resistance of I'm asking questions, I'm playing
Yes.
devil's advocate, I'm making sure that my hesitations are being addressed. I think that's like that healthy resistance that we need to have.
Yeah, such a great point.
Yeah. So I know that like there's so many. I just actually want to have like a huge long episode about this. I feel like we might need to do another one.
Part two.
Yeah, part two. We've talked about what are some things that resistant leaders can do. We've talked about what are some things that leaders can do for their teams and creating that. But if we just wrap it all up and we tie it up in a bow for the people listening, what are 2 to 3 practical tips that managers can take to be more AI savvy and actually start being a little bit at the front of this rather than at the back, kind of waiting to see?
Yeah, good question. First and foremost, it's always about what tools you have the opportunity to work with at work. You can play around at home if you want, but a lot of the stagnation is around you can only use Copilot, which has its absolute limitations. That's really frustrating for people. But if you're going to select a tool, you need to find the right one. And sometimes the difference between these tools, I always say it's like bringing a butter knife to a steak dinner. Chatty's a very general model. It's a very good all-rounder, but sometimes you might want to try Claude for more analysis and deeper insights. So it's finding the tool that works for you for the job, and that's really important. Before you do any of that, you must look at the privacy settings, right? You want to feel safe. You want to be able to sleep at night going, I'm using it ethically and I'm using it safely. And they all have their different ways of explaining it. They all have their different little toggles. And some people still don't realize they can switch off that training for models in ChatGPT. So it's really important that they just do that first so they feel safe. Find the right tool for you. The best thing you can start to do is learn how to prompt well. Because these models are so general, a lot of the frustration we see is because people don't understand that sometimes for more complex type prompting, you need a bit of a structure or some layers to that. And there's so many amazing resources out there that can help you understand what meta prompting is and how you structure that and what you put in there, and how you can change the grammar and remove the em dash. There's all of those little tips and tricks. Don't go in thinking you need to build GPTs. Not everybody does that. I've built a couple and it's relatively okay to do, easy to do. But just start with those small repetitive tasks where the data is safe to go in. You can trust those outputs and you know what you're looking for. Just doing those 3 things. Find the tool, check the settings, learn how to prompt well.
Yeah, that's
And so find the use cases as well. So yeah, just making sure that you can kind of find the little things that you do in your day that are repetitive enough for you to find the right outputs is a great place to start.
I have a project in chat where it does, like I put in the transcript for my podcast and it creates my show notes, it creates my email, it creates my YouTube description, it creates my website blurb, it gives me my tags, it gives me my SEO words. That's a perfect example of I could absolutely spend hours doing that, or I could pay someone to do that, or I could use this tool that can do that for me because I've done the grunt work, I've done the interview. So it's just pulling that out. So looking at where, and that's not a huge, like I don't rely on the show notes to be like this big thing, and so it's again like looking at where are the lowball things that it's like, oh, like this is just, how could I save even like half an hour? Because half an hour compounds. Like all of these little things compounds over time.
That's right.
So I love those steps. Like find the tool, and there's so many different tools as well. As you said, like ChatGPT can just be for general stuff. Claude could be for that deeper analysis. There's like Napkin that can create concepts and models and frameworks. There's like all sorts of different things. And again, you could get lost in that too. So doing an audit first, like doing an audit of where do I actually spend most of my time? What things have to be done by a human, like literally can only be done by a person actively thinking about it,
Yeah.
versus what can be done with an input for an AI tool to then create an output. Like
Yeah.
that would be like a really good place to start. And then I love the tip about the settings, making sure that the settings feel really good for you. And especially if you are using it for work. And the other thing that I would say is where possible, don't use any identifying information, even if your settings are set to don't train the language model. It's also just really important to just be smart. Don't use personal identifying information. Maybe don't use like very specific things about your organization, things like that, if you want to just stay on the safer, conservative side of using the tools. Unless you have like clear guidelines from your organization. And that's maybe what I would say is maybe the fourth step for leaders right now is really speak to your IT department or your chief technology officer, or if you're a small business, like really just thinking about who can I seek out to give me advice and guidance around this that works for our business, so that we make sure that we're doing things in alignment with that. And that if things start to go a little bit sideways or go a bit into the gray or beige area, that you've got someone there to chat to about it.
Yeah. And I think also just one other thing around the quality of the use of AI. One thing I'm really big on is data cleanliness. And in our teams, we know we've just let data go. It's all messy. It's in several places all at once. We probably haven't checked it in a good year. Making sure you're working with clean data is such an important point, because when you start to rely on outputs and your data's not clean, it becomes really, really messy. AI will scale all of that bias in your data and all of those errors. So it's really, really important, if you're going to unleash with data, go do the hard work and clean that up, which is sometimes actually a really big step for businesses. That seems hard to do. So that can actually be one of the deterrents to getting into AI.
I mean, that just gives me like trauma flashbacks in HR, where it's like, oh, we need to update the HR system. And it's like, we need to do a data upload. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to spend the next like 2 weeks in a spreadsheet, and I just want to self-implode.
Exactly. Legacy systems, legacy data, it is one of the things that stops businesses from really getting into this. But it's an annoyance. But once you've done it, you've done it, right?
I love that. It's such good points. Is there anything that you feel we haven't touched on that would be helpful for listeners to know or to think about?
I think one of the other points, if you're going to see your IT team, if you're lucky enough to have an IT team, you've got to also remember that those teams are also learning AI, that they're not going to have all of the answers. And I do feel for all of the CTOs and IT managers out there at the moment, because they will have a very long line of people coming to them saying, how do we use it? The best thing you can do as a business or as a team is to map out your change first. So spending time in your processes to go, what are the tasks that we want to fiercely protect as humans? We want to be in front of candidates having interviews. We want to be a manager to employee with performance reviews, that sort of stuff. Make sure you protect that. And then look at those tasks that you feel really comfortable with safe, clean data, to then scale AI over it to help you analyze more or move faster, be more efficient. If you can map that change first, you're going to get much further along when it's your turn to start bringing AI in those processes. Don't bring AI into broken processes and dirty data.
Yes. Oh, that is such a good one. I have 3 quick fire sample questions that I ask every guest at the end of the episode. What is the best advice you've ever received that's helped you to be a great leader?
Oh, I did think about this one. Really early on in my career, I was leaning into some pretty big conversations, but I'm sure the leaders can relate to this. I was taught by a very highly knowledgeable coach who said, Annie, when you go into those conversations, say to yourself, it's practice for the big game. It's always practice for the big game, because it removes that judgment on yourself that you have to be perfect and you have to have all the answers. It has to go well. If you just know you're practicing, it becomes much more, it's easier to walk into those really, really difficult conversations. So that has stuck with me right from my early days in HR.
Yeah, I love that. What is one thing that helps you to feel courageous to do scary things?
I think it would come down to my growth mindset. Tash, I've done a lot of work on that and studied neurochange, and it really helped me to learn more about that growth mindset of looking at opportunities with courage, but knowing that it's part of a journey, it's part of a bigger picture. And I guess that's where that practice for the big game comes in. Don't use a closed mindset, use that growth mindset to get through it and come out the other side, because there's always learnings, there's always more that you can build in your toolbox and further your career with.
Yeah, absolutely. And last one, what is one boundary that you uphold that supports you to be your best?
I think for me, I've always really valued honest conversations, and that's why I called my consultancy The Honest Human. I think we can get really tangled up having these human conversations, which is probably a conversation for another day around how much we're not leaning into that at the moment and hide behind emails or social media or whatever. For me, those deep human conversations, catching them early and really giving yourself grace to have the honest chat. There's been so many times where that has meant that I've saved a situation that could have snowballed into something much, much bigger. So people who know me, who work with me, know that when I'm showing up for an honest conversation, it's because I'm honoring you and I care about you. It's not because I'm coming from a place of protection.
Absolutely true. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Annie. This has been such an amazing conversation. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch or just follow your work after listening to this episode?
Head to our website, www.humaneer.app. Always welcome to connect on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with some of your leaders, Tash. And always happy that they email me at annie@humaneer.app.
Amazing. And we'll put those in the show notes as well so that you can find them there. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. If you've loved what we've spoken about today, please contact either myself or Annie and let us know. We always love to hear from you. And if you do have any questions around AI, Annie will absolutely be your person. She is really nitty gritty in this right now. And thank you again so much, Annie. I appreciate your energy and your time. And I know that listeners will have found this really valuable. So thank you.
Thanks, Tash. I've so enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Hey, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening to Lead With Less. It means the world to me if you could take a moment to leave a rating and a review on Apple, or just rate with 5 stars on Spotify. It means a lot to the growth and the expansion of the podcast. And if you know any other people leaders who could do with a dose of inspiration to level up their leadership skills, then please forward on this podcast to them. I would really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any feedback or have any thoughts, please message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or email. I'd love to hear from you.